24/7 Sports.
Ryan, schematically, what concerns you the most about their defense?
Schematically, they're very well coached. First off, they get lined up, and all schemes are good. It comes down to personnel, and they have very, very good personnel. But schematically, they mix up the coverages, they mix up the fronts, and they know what they're doing. They know how to get to their adjustments, and he can kind of see what formation you're in and make his calls. He does a nice job of that. Very well coached. But again, usually it comes down to personnel, and they have very good personnel. It starts up front. Very, very good defensive line. Linebackers are active. Corners are all conference players, and the safeties are very good as well. So I think it fits them well in what they do, and it'll be a big challenge for our offense.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, we saw a little bit of practice yesterday. It looked like Luke, as you told us earlier in the week, was doing some stuff at guard.
Yep.
How much have you guys tinkered with things, or do you guys kind of have what you think you'll do Saturday set on the offensive line?
Yeah, we're pretty much set going into practice today. So we have last day in pads. We'll take the pads off on Thursday. I felt like practice yesterday was excellent. I thought we had a bunch of energy in practice. Guys were competing. It's a combination of good on good and also against scouts. There was just good energy at practice yesterday, being outside, and we'll do that again today. And I think coming off of today's practice, last opportunity in pads this week, we'll get a feel for exactly what that rotation is going to look like. There's been some good positive mojo up there. Guys are getting after it. I feel like we got a good plan on what we want to get done this week. But let's take a look at the film here tonight, figure out where that's at, and then we'll attack tomorrow.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
More of a big picture, I think, just what we got around the country. You've seen some other guys from the 25 recruiting class already enrolled and participating in practice. Are there guys you're expecting as you try to make this run here to join you guys in practicing, whether it's now or getting out to bowl sites?
Yeah, so we've talked. Guys need to finish their high school career first, and then move on from there. But classes start here the first week of January. So based on how things go, we've talked to those guys about that opportunity, and some of them have to make a decision whether they want to play in all-star games or not. But for those who are enrolling at mid-year, based on how these next few games shake out, we're gonna have an opportunity to have these guys here, and that's been the plan all along, to have them practice with us all the way to the 20th.
And just to follow, is Eric still with you guys now that he's in the portal?
Right now, he's not. Yeah.
Whitney Harding, WCMH.
Hey Ryan, on that snippet that we saw.
But just so you know, that was his decision. Yeah, just so you know that. Yeah.
That snippet of practice we saw yesterday, you were with the offensive line, very active, very vocal. Considering what that group's going through, that makes sense. What has this week been like for you, being more involved with them and being a part of that group?
Well, want them to play with great confidence in this game, and whenever you feel like there's something that needs addressed, you got to make sure you're on it. And I feel like they've had a good week of practice, and their confidence is building, and I want to be a part of that. I'll be a part of that again today. Justin's worked hard this week, and those guys have as well. But it comes down to the leadership of Donovan and Josh, and then it goes from Carson, and then obviously to the guards. But I think it also helps having Will, encouraging these guys with leadership. When you get into playoff games, obviously the offensive line play is critical, and we need these guys to play really, really well. So same thing. We'll be in there today, and I feel like yesterday was a good, again, mojo coming off the field, good energy coming off the field that way, and they know how they need to play in this game. Not that everything has to be perfect, but we got to rock off the ball and knock people back. They have a good front, and so might we swing and miss every once in a while? Okay, but we're not going to swing and miss by not being aggressive. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to go after these guys and making sure that we're moving back the line of scrimmage, and we got to make sure we do that again today in practice, and then use the time leading up to the game to get their body and mind right to go play the game.
Has it been fun for you to be a part of that energy?
It's just part of coaching. You bounce around from different group and different room, and ultimately it's the jobs of the coaches to get them ready to go play really, really hard and do their job. But yeah, bouncing from room to room to help these guys understand what their job is in this game plan, and that's it. And I think we've done a good job of focusing on that, which is doing your job in this game plan, and just making sure that we're coaching the team and the players are playing, and that we keep the main thing the main thing.
All right, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Yeah, right. The running backs, what have you seen from them, running behind this offensive line that you guys have been tinkering with that makes you think that you guys are going to be able to do some damage on it?
Well, I think it's important for them to have their best game this year in this game, both Travion and Quinshawn. They have had a good season this year. They've done some really good things, but now we got to be at our best, and we got to run downhill, and everybody's a part of that. Will's a part of that. The receivers are a part of that. The tight ends, but obviously the offensive line and running backs are a critical part of that. So you've heard me say this before: 3-yard runs got to be 5-yard runs. We got to take care of the football. We got to get downhill, and then the first 4 yards are the most important. We got to get 4 yards every run, and then after that, that's up to them. And they know that they want to play their best game. I think the preparation's been good. Got to continue to have a good one today, but there was some good energy yesterday. I think the runs fit well, and so we got to be creative on how we get them the ball as well. I think that's a big part of this game plan.
You guys brought in Quinshawn because, first of all, he's a really good player, but also to keep Travion and Quinshawn both fresh for this. How have you seen that play out the way that you guys envisioned it from a carries standpoint, from a load management standpoint with those two as they head into now the next 4 games?
They look fresh to me. They're flying around out there at practice. They look strong. It looks like they're seeking contact, which this time of the year is important, and they look fast. So, now we got to go do that on Saturday night and play that way.
Dan Hope, Leavenworth.
Ryan, have you guys made a decision at kicker? Are you guys going to stick with Jaden Fielding?
Yeah, so, today in practice is our field goal day, so those guys will get out there and practice. We'll see how today goes. We'll see how the rest of the week goes, and then, we'll make a decision at the end of the week how we want to enter the game. Not that that's any different than any other week, but we'll certainly be taking a hard look how it goes today.
How have you seen Jaden respond to that Michigan game?
Well, I think his teammates have been good in terms of, support and knowing that, we wouldn't have put him in the game if we didn't trust him. But he also knows that, he's got to do his job. Everyone's got to do their job around here. And it's very important, to winning games that everyone does their job. His job is to make field goals, and so he's got to have a good day today, and Austin will be right in there too, and they'll both have an opportunity to kick today, and we'll make a best decision coming out of the this week of practice that we can to see who gives us the best chance to win the game, and then we'll go from there.
Austin Ward, the podcast.
Ryan, when you talk about rocking off the ball, knocking back the line of scrimmage, certainly that would have been easier if you had Josh and Seth. When you are shorthanded, I know you can't abandon that mentality. What other solutions could there be if you are not at the same level that you were 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, well, I think that's a mentality. Now, schematically, you got to make sure that we're adjusting and doing, again, maximizing our strengths, minimizing our deficiencies. We got to do that in this game. And so, yeah, without getting into too much, we got to still, we're Ohio State. We still got to be able to do that. However, there are ways that we can, again, maximize our talents. And that's probably the best way to put it without getting into too many details on things. But you're right. You got to find out what your guys do the best and then go from there. But I also think we have some capable guys up there that can, do a great job of, getting knocked back and, but a part of that is double teams. You gotta use your technique and then the running back's got to get downhill, and then there's a confidence level in that. And we'll continue to work this game plan. I think that we got a good plan on how we're going to attack this thing. Got to go put it on the field. But we're also not just going to run sideways all over the place. There's a good complement of, getting the ball to the perimeter, but also running the ball and getting vertical.
I know you love how we might see one snap of practice and make sweeping
Right.
Conclusions. And you still have to watch another practice and get the pads up. Do you think right now that Tegra would remain starting as the starter at right guard? Because it felt like that was maybe the spot that started the last conversation for the previous 3 weeks.
I think it's a good point. I think you're going to see Austin kind of going back and forth. I think, Luke has been at left here, left guard during these last couple weeks of practice. Tegra stayed at right. And that's kind of, Austin will be the swing man because he's done both. And so I think you're going to see a rotation at both spots.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, the last game you had where you guys had a touchdown on your opening drive was Oregon, and I know you talked about in the past you don't script those series, they come from buckets of plays, but is there anything you can do to maybe try to manufacture more points out of the gate, because you talked about it sort of building confidence, especially important this week?
Yeah, well, we always want to start every game fast. Ultimately, it comes down to playing 4 quarters. So that doesn't change anything. But it's all about execution, and we have to make sure that we're putting our guys in the best position to be successful and practicing it that way. And so once we move the ball into that red zone, we got to finish in this game in the red zone, and that's a big part of it, as coming off the last game. And so that's been an emphasis, and getting some confidence early in the game certainly would go a long way.
Jeremy Birmingham, podcast.
Ryan, I'm not sure if you want to talk about it. You guys just announced the signing of Philip Daniels in the transfer portal. As far as him individually, what do you think makes him a good fit for the potential spot on the offensive line? But in a bigger picture, has your portal approach changed at all based on the last couple of years, or is it where you guys are still looking to just supplement, fill a couple holes where it seems like a lot of college football is making wholesale changes to their roster?
I think every year it's become probably a higher percentage just across the country. For us, it'll probably be the same thing this year. I think last year we ended up 7 or 8 guys. It'll probably be higher this year. Maybe there was another guy I'm forgetting, but I think every year that number is going to go up. But as we've talked about before, this sustainability of a program has got to be built through high school recruiting and then development and then retention of your roster, which that's not going to change here. That being said, we know that there's some positional needs that we got to get addressed, and we're going to work hard to make sure that we do that. I think there's unbelievable opportunity in certain spots. You're seeing some of that already, and so we'll be aggressive in making sure that we already have some good guys in that room already that we feel like can continue to grow and develop and then have a bright future ahead of them. But we certainly are going to need some help in there, and so we got to go out and make sure that we're addressing that, because we're getting ready to go play in a game, but there's another season coming real fast, and this portal is open, and so we got to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in building our roster for next season.
Is there a recipe, like a guy like Philip, for example, who's got 3 years left to play, has gone out, left Ohio, played good ball somewhere else in the Big Ten, or that level of play? Is that like the recipe that you guys would like to follow?
I think when you look at it, the NFL gives you a lot of great information, and when you look at the value of a rookie as opposed to somebody who's in their second contract who has shown that they can play in the NFL for multiple years at a high level, the value is different. Well, it's similar in college. There's certain freshmen that come in that are impact players day one, and that's one thing. But for a good majority of freshmen, it's going to take a year or two for them really to reach their true value or top value and potential on the field. So bringing folks in who have played years already in college, who have shown that they can play at a certain level, there's a value there that's different than bringing in an 18, 19-year-old player as a freshman. So those are all things that we're all looking to calibrate as we're figuring things out moving forward.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Just to clarify on Montgomery, so you talked about Austin being that swing guy. Is Luke in line to start potentially if things go well today? Is he in line to start at left guard in this game?
We really haven't talked about probably the starter yet, but they're going to roll and see how today goes, and then we'll kind of decide who's going to end up taking the first snap.
You mentioned that Luke's been close to pushing for playing time and getting on the field. Was there anything that he's done that, like, all of a sudden, like recently, he made another jump to get onto the field, or is this more about just trying something to find your?
I think it's been a steady increase over time, and now he's got to go put it on the field.
Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, when you look at Tennessee's tempo and the way they kind of spread out defense with how wide they go, how much of a benefit is it to have 2 guys at safety like Caleb and Layton who can prevent their shots on the play action base, but also kind of make consistency in gap inside?
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to, create space there, and having veteran guys who, understand how teams are trying to attack them, but they're also going to have to tackle very, very well in space. Not just them, but the corners. They're going to challenge you there. They're going to try to get the ball with perimeter screens and different things to the outside, and then also the linebackers. But ultimately, it's going to come down to our front. Our front's got to win up front. Our front has to win the gaps. They've got to do a good job of knocking back the line of scrimmage, getting off of blocks, and then we got to tackle really well. Their running back is an excellent player. He makes a lot of guys miss. He breaks a lot of tackles. So we got to be sure we're all running to the football, and that's one of the things about it being spread out. That is a challenge, but also the tempo part of it. And so they're counting on us not doing that. So we've got to do a good job of that. It's been a huge emphasis this week. I really like our plan. Our guys are energized right now. I think the guys on defense have great confidence in practice. You can feel it. You can just see it. So, again, focus today is just an unbelievable Wednesday practice. A lot of third down, a lot of red zone, a lot of situational things, which we know will be very important in this game. And then we polish it up on Thursday, Friday, and go.
You guys have talked all offseason about needing the second team guys to be there for a playoff run like this.
Yeah.
With Tennessee's tempo, does this feel like a game where you're going to need Kate McDonald, Edric Houston, like all of those guys up front?
Yep, we're going to need depth for that reason. Now, if you get 3 and outs, it certainly makes a big difference, when they can't continue to stay on the field and wear you down. So we know how important it is, that first play of a drive. They do a good job of that, in terms of how they scheme up the first play of a drive, because they know that first down is critically important to their success. So, 3 and outs will be critical in the game, and certainly will help with that as we're talking about it.
Stefan Kreischnick, Cleveland.com.
We heard yesterday Mecca kind of talk about, not just the players trying to improve for the Michigan game, but also kind of holding the coaches accountable as well. Just what has that dialogue kind of been? How the coaches kind of embrace maybe what the players are saying as well, as opposed to, one-way avenue?
I think when you come off of, any loss, you want to identify the things that, went wrong, the things that obviously went well, but the things that went wrong. And then, everyone's got to take accountability. And, if we're going to move forward, there has to be accountability between the players and the coaches. And that's about trust. And there's been open dialogue there. We've had some really good meetings in those areas. And, you got to take accountability. Here's some things we got to do better. Here's adjustments we have to make based on what's going on. And then, both sides understanding that, we're all looking to do the same thing here. And I think you got a very, very mature team, so their feedback is very critical in this. And I thought it's been very, very productive. I think we're all in the same. It allows you to move on quicker. I think, you get to get it out there. Everyone talks through it. Here are the adjustments we're going to make. Everybody agrees with it, and then we're all rowing in the right direction. And that's where we're at right now.
How much do you think it helps a guy like Jeremiah to kind of see Emeka be one of those leaders? Do you feel like Jeremiah's voice has kind of grown, even though he's a freshman? He is still one of the best players on the team.
Right now, I would say he lets his play do his talking for him. When he does speak up, people listen because they have a lot of respect for him. But right now, he's letting his play do his talking right now. But he's also getting an opportunity to see some tremendous leadership within the team.
Andrew Gillis, Cleveland.com.
Brian, when you look at Nico Iamaleava, what stands out about him on film, and maybe how have you seen him get better throughout the course of the second season?
Well, he's got a strong arm, which is critical with their offense and how they want to, push the ball to the sideline. With the NFL hashes, with the college hashes, it's certainly wider than it is in the NFL. And so, they try to spread you all the way to the sideline. So he's in line with the quarterbacks they've had in the past who have a strong arm. He can get the ball out quickly, makes good decisions, but he's also athletic, and he's done a nice job of, if the first couple reads aren't there, he goes and looks to make plays. So we got to make sure that we got a good plan for his scrambles, because that's something that's kind of been hidden this year for them. And he's very accurate as well, so very talented.
Joe Nugent, WCMH.
Certainly won't be the first night game of the season, but first one in a long time. What does the day look like for the team as you build toward kickoff?
Well, we've been practicing a little bit later on. We moved it back a little bit. 4 o'clock we felt like was good. We get any later than that, it gets a little bit too long of a day. But we've kind of moved things back a little bit on purpose. We've let them sleep in, as opposed to the last half of the season when we were playing at noon. We were getting guys to bed early. We were waking them up early. We were starting things a little bit earlier. With this game, we've had 3 weeks to prepare. We're letting them sleep in a little bit, bringing them in here and practicing later on, just to kind of get their biorhythms in sync for that. But the day of the game, again, let them sleep in, try to keep it as routine as possible. We'll have breakfast. We'll come over here for a little while, get a couple walkthroughs in, let them get some treatment, go back over, have a few meetings. 4 hours before the game, we have our pregame meal, and then we're on the bus and we're rolling.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Particularly against the better teams on your schedule, how close would you say you've come to playing the kind of football that you will need to play to win this whole thing?
Yeah, I think you've definitely seen throughout the year, whether it's on offense, defense, and special teams, just very good play. But then you've also seen times where it hasn't been that way. So a complete game is what's required to win this game right here, and that's our focus.
Yeah, I mean, for extended periods, you've had that in games. Penn State obviously played with Indiana, but not for 60 minutes against the better teams. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I think we've played some good teams this year. We've had 3 top 5 opponents, and we've gone obviously toe to toe with everybody and won 2 of them, and came up short obviously at Oregon. But there's they have good players too, and they've made plays, but we know what our capability is, and we want to make sure that we're playing our best game on defense, our best game on offense, and obviously taking care of the football. And then obviously on special teams, you've seen us, really make a major impact in the second half of the season in special teams. So we have the capability to do that. I think you've seen that in some of those games as well.
Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
It's been 3 weeks. It'll be 3 weeks since the last game. How long has it felt?
I think as we get closer to this game, guys want to get back on the field now. You can feel it. There's just an edginess to them. They want to get back out and play this game, coaches included. It hasn't felt as long as a bowl practice, where it's been a month or so leading up to it. So I think it's a good lead up. I think we're in a good place right now, and guys are excited, and want to get this thing rolling, and we got a big month ahead of us.
Tim May, Letterman Row.
Oh, thank you very much. Ryan, you played in some big games as a college quarterback and stuff. What would be your encouragement or whatever last minute kind of talk with Will Howard be about in a game like of this magnitude, where you got to be on point, but you also got to play free to a certain extent, right? I mean, what would you tell him? I guess
I try to tell this to all the players, not just quarterbacks, but when you're playing in big games, you don't. Whether maybe it's a defensive lineman, or you don't sit up all night thinking about making that big sack or making that big throw. You really focus on going as hard as you possibly can, and those plays will happen because you've worked so hard. You're going to fall back to the level of your training, and your instincts will take over in those moments. I think sometimes when we try to play out a game or predetermine what's going to happen, you can get yourself a little bit sideways. So, for all those guys, it's, let's just, when you put your head on your pillow, just focus on going as hard as you possibly can and giving everything you have. And, maybe that's for him a scramble or, but for a quarterback, I think it's important in big games to find the rhythm of the game early on, and sometimes you can be a little too fast. Sometimes you can be a step slow. You got to find that rhythm early in the game, and then it kind of takes off from there.
when you look at plays, Denzel Burke forcing Tyler Warren out at like the 2 or 3 yard line at Penn State, last second kind of thing. That turned out to be a huge play because y'all got the goal line stand and then came off the goal line. Do you encourage that to your players, that every play can be the play?
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing. We showed that clip in here after the game and then the plays that followed right after that. And absolutely, every play matters in big games. And so, that's it. And understanding that, you just never know when that play could be. And I think on defense, it's important, if something like that were to happen, you got to get them on the ground or, some other situation, give our defense a chance to get out there and play because if you give them a yard, they're going to defend it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Folks, thank
Good.
you very
Okay,
much.
guys.